Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first installment of the latest webcast series, where we're going to be sitting down and having discussions with industry experts to uncover how they're navigating this ever-evolving digital landscape that we all live and work in. I'm Kristina Prokop, the General Manager of Audience Solutions at Dun Bradstreet and co-founder of Eyeota. And joining me here today is our special guest, Andrea Kwiatek, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Goodway Group. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Very, very happy to have you here. So Andrea is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Goodway, as I mentioned, where she manages the existing partnerships and leads the emerging players across the digital advertising ecosystem. She facilitates and deal negotiations and works with strategic partners to really bring innovative solutions to their clients. And she has an incredibly extensive experience in the ad tech space, which makes me very excited to hear her viewpoints on a lot of these, on a lot of the areas we'll cover today. And she's really specialized in understanding IT management and how collaboration with functional teams can really help drive development and execution. She may be very familiar to some of you. She's been featured as an expert in a lot of different publications and industry organizations discussing topics like first-party data, CTV, and supply-side platforms. So Andrea, who is broadcasting live from Erie, Pennsylvania, with a very full house. In Erie, she's with her husband and 3 sons and 2 dogs, and is an absolute diehard Pittsburgh sports fan. So we're super happy to have you here. And in today's discussion, we're going to explore how the Goodway Group has been adapting to all of the challenges and the opportunities that we have seen that are posed by the deprecation of third-party cookies. And really what that goes into is not only the third-party cookies, but this constant evolution that we see as an industry. So we'll be discussing the impact of these changes on the industry and share strategies to navigate this evolving landscape. So let's dive right in. Andrea, so can you tell us about your journey into the role that you hold today as Director of Strategic Partnerships at Goodway?
Sure. And let me tell you, thank you. That was a wonderful intro. I did a little bit of a blushing at that time. So thank you. So I've been with Goodway Group. Actually, this month will be 10 years. And I started out as a media buyer, assistant media buyer, where I was assisting the media buying teams with buying programmatic campaigns. And actually, I worked alongside one of our biggest automotive teams. So I certainly learned a lot with having hands on keyboards. I evolved and moved into a media planner position where I was doing some of the strategy and planning for some of our agency clients. And then around 2018, we started our own SPO strategies, and that was led by my previous colleague, Amanda Martin. And so when she started delving into that, I really got hooked. I loved peeking under the hood to understand how it all works and how we can do it better, and then do it better than anybody else. And so I pitched the idea to have an additional partnerships person fully focused around supply side platforms and expanding our SPO efforts. And then once I dove into that, then it expanded to other types of partnerships, whether it was data providers, publishers, platforms, name any ad tech vendor, insert. That was the start of the conversation. And then luckily we have evolved and pivoted. And so now we have a full investment team that I partner with and work with closely that can focus more on those different channel partnerships. And so it's been really exciting to be a part of Goodway Group throughout this whole phase of my career. And I feel very lucky.
That's great. And, for those of the audience who aren't as familiar with Goodway and the work that you do with your clients, can you just in a few sentences tell the audience more about what is it that you focus on at a high level with the Goodway Group and how you service your clients?
Sure. So Goodway Group has been around for over 90 years, which sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah.
We began our journey as a printing company long before I joined, of course. And through that, they've been defined by shifts and forward-thinking pivots at every turn of the marketing path. And so at our core, we believe in transformations, and we want to evolve to stay at the forefront of the marketing industry. And so our only constant is dedication to building partnerships based on trust. And so that helped build the foundation of where our pivots have turned to. And so in 2006, our now CEO, Jay Friedman, joined. And so that kind of was a big pivot into the digital realm of things. And then that's when we became a fully remote organization. And so even through that time, we've been around for so many other different pivots in the digital marketing ecosystem and marketing overall. And so we recently have just rebranded and kind of announced our there's a couple of different business functions underneath Goodway Group, but we've evolved and included 2 different core functions within the Goodway umbrella. One being Gradient, where we focus on working with brands directly. And the other one is GCOM, where we're showcasing our efforts and expertise in the commerce era with some recent, showcasing our expertise around retail media networks and retail media offerings to support the commerce marketing clients. So it's been quite a journey, and only being here for 10 years, I can tell you a lot has happened over 10 years, but I'm excited for what's ahead because I just know that we're always going to be at the forefront of what our marketers and clients need to continue to succeed.
Yeah, and I would say 90 years is quite an impressive run. And if you look at all of the evolution that has happened over almost a century, that's really impressive. So when you look at that and you look at how you're servicing these clients, so you really do that in a breadth of different types of combinations of service and technologies and really, if I understand everything correctly, you guys are really always looking at what is the right combination of services and technology that the client needs to ultimately achieve their goals, and it has a really interesting mix of what pieces you can put together based on what industry, based on where that client is.
Yeah. To talk more around that, it's really putting the efforts around what our clients need and how they can stay relevant to their consumers and how do we grow them into being effective marketing leaders. And so we build around our solutions to do that support, and it's evolved quite a bit.
Yeah. And if obviously we're all working through massive changes right now, and I think we've both been in the industry long enough to know that acceleration of change never really feels like it lets off. I'll be honest, for me, it can be extremely exhausting at times, but it's what I think it's what makes it fun, and definitely keeps you young in your mind and always getting to the forefront of the newest things that are happening. So in all these changes, and with the work that you're doing at Goodway Group, what have been the biggest challenges that you're working through this year?
I would say one of the largest challenges is navigating the impending cookie signal loss that has been teased in front of us for a couple years now, and now it's going to be delayed longer. And so the challenge really comes from what solution is the best, or what suite of solutions do we need to have to satisfy and support all of our different types of clients. And so since the first announcement that cookies were going away, we have been working, on day one, building a task force, exploring the different things of what happens when it does go away, what breaks, what do we need to do to overcome that? What metrics do we have to start looking at? What data providers do we need to start looking at? What data won't we have access to? And so we have been, it's funny because we felt like we were ready last year, and then come a year later, we are ready, but there's still new offerings, new partners that start up every day in our space. And so we have to continue learning, continue evolving, and making sure that we have the right solutions for our clients' variable needs. And so it's important to rely on our partners for that, but then also stay curious. And like you said, stay ahead of all the new things that are popping up in our industry every day.
Yeah, and how, just out of curiosity, obviously this back and forth, how do your customers respond to that? This, it's happening, it's not happening, it's happening, it's not happening. Did they have, what were the reactions in general across the board?
So for us, obviously, we're frustrated, right? We wanted to rip the Band-Aid off. We want it to happen. We want to move toward those more tangible outcomes and not relying on something that was sort of probabilistic type of, this could be my audience, this might not be my audience, or could have been my audience, 6 months ago, and now they're not. So we want to just move forward. But there's so many of the providers and platforms and partners that are still using cookies because they're still there. And so the feeling from our clients is, why fix it if it's working? Why break it? It's not broken yet. So let's do business as usual. And we're really addressing that conversation with them with, okay, well then let's put aside some test budget and see if we can explore so that when it does happen, you're ready and you know how to answer to your CMO and you know how to answer to your CFO of what you need or how you need to change things or why your metrics are changing because this signal loss has happened. So there's some clients who are ready to go and have that test budget, and there's some that are just not ready. They're just waiting, and they do lean on us as an agency partner across all of our different types of clients, because we are the ones that are, we are ahead of the game. We are paying attention. We know what's going on. So it's a challenge because we want to move forward and test as if they aren't even here. But it's hard when some of the partners we use are still relying on them. And so it's going to be this challenge until it actually does go away.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that some customers are more reluctant to free up test budgets and things like that. It's interesting to think of what might be going on in their heads, if it's kind of like, well, they'll be doing enough learning from everyone else's testing that they can apply to us. But I don't know how you see it, but I'm assuming that each customer's, what they're tracking, how they're tracking it, the way that their business works, it's not necessarily that it's not cookie cutter, right? Depending on what, what stage they're at, what kind of first party data assets they have, I'm sure there's a lot of variables. So it might not be that black and white of, you can do that, you're learning with everyone else and apply it to us.
It's not, you're right. And it's exactly that. It's some have first party data, some don't have first party data, and some have to start from scratch and begin collecting first party data. And then there's some publishers that don't have any first party data. And so that's where we rely on data partnerships such as Dun Bradstreet to kind of be that seed audience to support those clients that don't have that available data or just are starting, or they need to build it out, or they need growth. And so that's where, we're exploring and deepening our partnerships with all of the different providers out there that can help us meet those needs. And then you mentioned too, it's challenging because each channel is different. It's different in search, it's different in social, and it's different in programmatic, video and display. So it's very, there's not a lack of work in our industry right now.
I don't want to be the one to say that complexity is the job security for all of us, but sometimes it feels like that. Yes. And so, just to be clear, so those are, from the Goodway Group's perspective, those are all channels. I mean, you are covering all channels for your customers, correct?
Yes, all advertising channels. And it varies by client what they need, but yes, we provide services across all media channels, programmatic or direct, managed service, self-service. We really do what's in the best interest of our clients.
Yeah. And how, building a bit on the question around how you interact with your clients and how leaned in they are. In general, when you're working on these large transformation processes, what are they, how engaged are they? Are there certain types of questions that they're always asking? And do you see any differences in between preparedness by vertical or size of customer type?
That's a great question. Again, because we work across so many different types of clients and verticals, each need is very different. And so how they work with us is different. How their asks of us are different. Some of the ones that I've been involved in are around who this person keeps reaching out to me. What do you know about them? Have you used them before? Like a vendor, a partner. What do you think about this person and stuff? So that's one of the asks that our clients get, is just leaning on us to be a knowledge and an expert in the field of all these different types of capabilities and offerings and vetting it for them. But then they also lean on us to bring them new and innovative solutions, new ways to grow their first party data, new ways to attract new clients, new ways to drive outcomes. And so we are constantly learning and spending the time to identify what's best for this particular client. And so our investment team spends a lot of time doing both, helping this individual client needs and supporting with giving ideas, but also sourcing out what those new innovative things are coming to market, and then identifying, where that's a good fit for a particular client.
Makes total sense. And I'd love to ask, digging a little bit deeper into your comment about the data. This is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about in terms of, because we operate primarily only in the data space, and activating data for clients and collaborating with clients on expanding the insights on their first party data. And what I always am really interested in, we definitely see it from our side, the spectrum still in terms of the maturity of clients and where they are in the build of their first party data and how they're managing that, what their overall data, how deep their data strategy really is. The differences are still immense. And I'm super curious, because obviously the agency traditionally is always the one, really guiding and sharing, doing the insights and targeting and all of these other things. Whereas when the first party data sits with the client, I've always, it always is a big question for me, is how do you balance, or how do customers always want to balance when it comes to their first party data? How do they balance that work with the agency? Are they holding it more in-house? Are they leaning on you? Are they asking for help? I think you mentioned already to that point that, some are asking for help, and how do I actually build this data asset? So I'd love to hear a little bit more from your perspective. What are those dynamics when it comes to building first party data strategies, and also importantly, how that data is used in the day-to-day? What does that dynamic look like in between your customers and yourself?
Yeah, I love that question. So it's a little different for each client. So it requires us to be experts on both sides of the table. And starting from scratch, we have our consulting firm, CVE, and that's their expertise. That's their forte, is they can help a marketer understand the type of tech stack that they need to begin collection or building up of their first party data. They can also do an analysis and audit of where they are, and then what they need to do to improve or to grow and help support that. So that's one thing, which I love that offering that we have. And then from the activation side of it, or strategy side of it, one, we don't want to touch our clients' PII or their first party data. That's number one. And so it is on the clients, our brand partners, to manage that, collect that, and store it and segment it with how they want to activate it. But we also are certainly capable of helping them to identify new ways to segment, new ways to leverage and lean on their first-party data. You can suppress audiences, we can target them in a different way, we can segment them. And so we have different tools that help us do that. We can enrich their first-party data too. So we built a product that we call Passport One that leans on our customers' first-party data, where we can upload it into our tool so they can do that directly. And then once it's in our tool, we're able to enrich it from different data partnerships that we have in-house, including Dun Bradstreet. And so we can then take it and build different audiences. We can segment the data and then push it for activation. And so depending upon where the client is and their first-party data journey will determine how we interact with them. And so the other idea is that Passport One is built for clients who don't have their own first-party data. And so we can start with the seed data from our data partnerships and start to do some test analysis on which one resonates, which one is driving the most performance, and then get creative with how we can adjust their overall data strategy. And then, like I said, if clients are unsure of where to even start or how, or even what platform to use to collect their data and enrich it, or at least, make sure they have the right consents, we have a division under Goodway that can help support and provide those recommendations to those clients.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because I think it is. I'm sure you see all parts of the spectrum, and I think that when we work with data day in and day out, you see how complex it can be, and I think the reality is that not all companies have the manpower or the insight to be doing that effectively, and so I think it's a great offering that you can meet the client, meet the customer where they are, right? And have a whole host of options. Yeah. So I'd like to spend a few minutes digging into B2B specifically. So thinking about the B2B companies that you're working with, what are the most promising strategies for marketers in that vertical when you're working with them today and looking at cookieless environment solutions?
So I will caveat that I had to lean on my B2B expert, Jason Mulder. He's been an expert on our B2B team. And he says it's being able to rely on your own data, and your website's a great place to start to understand who is coming to your website. So who is that audience? In addition, some of our B2B clients, they're starting to see an increase in branding overall. And so, real time. So seeing a big shift of B2B clients focusing on branding. I think a lot of times B2B focuses more on the lower funnel, but they have to remember the B2B client can be a long, customer journey path or short, depending on the product. And so once you realize that 95% of your audience isn't in a buying motion, it's important to stay relevant and top of mind. And so when you're in a buying motion, you're already part of the consideration process in the funnel. And so having a way to develop content that informs and attracts your ideal audience or help make them smarter with the products that you offer, whether it's with social or website content, that can start to develop a strategy to build your own first-party data. And then you can develop it by retargeting or different sequences and reaching those potential prospects and set you up for success for when they are ready to buy your product. So the branding piece, I think, is super important that not a lot of B2B marketers think about, but it's something we're finally seeing them take in action and take to market, and have seen some really good success out of it.
That's interesting. And I think if you look at I'm assuming, in that same scope, with the macroeconomic environment that we see right now, those buying, the cycle, the buyer's journey is a bit longer than it has been in the past year. So all the more, focusing on keeping top of mind, how am I interacting them without, maybe not in the lowest part of the funnel is critical in this day and age. So, you've had a really amazing career. I also liked, if you look back on it and all the experience that you've had in the different steps along the way, do you feel like you have a leg up maybe on some others because of the breadth of the background that you bring into your role and really the depth into the inner workings?
I will say, diving deeper into the supply side platform space and looking under the hood and really digging into analytics has given me a leg up in this role and in this industry, because I question, I'm curious about everything. I pressure test a lot of different methodologies. So I do think it has given me a leg up, especially having hands on keyboards and knowing how programmatic works. That certainly gave me insight into, what are the right solutions and how can Goodway be different and how we can bring our marketers along with us in the success of our company, because we challenge things. We challenge the status quo. You shouldn't always be complacent with what you're doing, how you're performing. How can you do better? What can you do better? What can you change? And so I think that certainly has helped me into my path and into my career and to where I am today.
And if you were speaking to either people early on in their career or anyone looking to start out in the programmatic advertising industry, what would there be any words of wisdom you would give them, or advice that you would give them along the way?
Yes, I would say be very comfortable with change and complexity, because it's only getting more complex as digital evolves. I mean, the tech is evolving every day. We have new entries in with AI. That's a whole nother realm that we have to stay ahead of. Last year was all about the metaverse, and now I feel like that's quieted down, and now we're into AI, and there's so many different ways that can go. And so if you're looking to get into programmatic, you need to be able to evolve and adapt to all the constant change, and to be okay to challenge the status quo, or else you won't be relevant 5 years later.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think for people who don't work in this industry, it's always hard for me to compare, because I've grown up in this industry since I graduated. I started in '98 in San Francisco, and have never stopped. And it just amazes me, the amount of change and the speed of change. And if you, like you said, if you look down the path, it's only getting faster, and it's only getting more fragmented, and it's only getting more complex. But on the other hand, so interesting. I mean, there's just so much to be done. So maybe we don't need the complexity. But I think our jobs are safe for quite a few years in the future. Yeah. So it's like I said in the beginning, it's also an industry I absolutely love being a part of, but it can be exhausting.
It can be exhausting, yes. But I love the learning part of it. I feel like the learning part makes me feel young and relevant, because like you said, I've got a house of teenage boys, right? And I'm barely keeping up on their slang that they're using these days, and that makes me feel old. And so I feel like I turn to the ad tech industry because I know what those slang and what those terms mean, and so I feel like I'm in a good spot. So it's fun how it kind of brings that light to my everyday home life.
That is funny. And I could just imagine you could just break out with a list of all of our ad tech acronyms and drop that mic.
We have no idea.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us on the webcast today. It was really fun speaking with you. And I just wanted to share with the audience, if you want to find more information about the Goodway Group, you can find them at goodwaygroup.com, or follow them on LinkedIn or Instagram. So Andrea, thank you so much, and keep adapting, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you at the next event or in the next session.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.